many years. I first saw you all spring into action probably around 2001 to protect the dignity of the families at those funerals. And you stood out there hours in heat and in bitter cold, sometimes for very long hours. So I appreciate everything that you've done, how you protect the honor of not only the fallen, but then I've seen you go to deployment ceremonies, welcome home ceremonies, honor flights. And your schedule yesterday, I know some of you were at Agawam at our Veterans Cemetery, and I just have to express my appreciation for everything that you have done and everything that you do continue to do to honor our veterans and their family members, especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. So I want to say my deep gratitude, and we know that you will be doing this to honor our veterans in the days ahead, but I want to thank you for everything you've done up to this point. But at this time, I know everyone's taking a picture with him, but I do want to invite Governor Baker up, who we know has been a huge supporter at all of the different, he has been to all of the funerals, he has been to all of the different Plainside honors, and you have seen him over the last 8 years. And so very grateful, and I will turn it over to you, Governor Baker.
So, wow, that's loud. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming today, and we would have done this more often if it hadn't been for that pandemic thing, which kind of got in the way. But the first casualty after Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and I took office was a medic by the name of John Dawson, who was from Whitensville, Massachusetts, and his wake was on I think it was a fall day, I think it was in the fall, and you drive out to Central Mass, and Whitensville's a little bit off the beaten path, and sort of come into the downtown square, and you turn the corner. This way you turn the corner. You take a right, you go up a hill. And the funeral home where his wake was being held is on the right. And there must have been, I don't know, 150 Patriot Guard lining the sidewalk and the area around the outside of the funeral home, and the Lieutenant Governor and I went inside and spent a little time with the family, and then we came out and they waited to start the wake until we got there, which I wish they hadn't done, because there were a lot of people standing in line who had to wait until we showed up, although we did get there about the same time it began. But we worked our way through the whole crowd, and also then shook hands and thanked all the Patriot Guard folks who were there. And the family actually spoke more than once. I've had a sort of correspondence with a number of the families I've met who want to have a correspondence. I mean, I don't push it on them. If they want to talk, I'm happy to talk. And they've talked to me a number of times about what it meant to them to have so many people show up and pay their respects who didn't know John to him because of who he was, what he stood for, and what he did, and the loss that he and his family were suffering through. Because it's not just you lose your life, you also lose the rest of it. You know, you don't get to get married, you don't get to have kids, you don't get to, there's so many things you don't get when that happens. And I could literally go through the list of the number of times the Lieutenant Governor and I have been with these friends and families during this incredibly awful, terrible moment. Tommy Sullivan was another one in Springfield, where they spoke specifically to us about how much your presence meant to them. And I really, we did this a couple times simply because we would have done it more, but we did it a couple times simply to just say, thank you. Thank you for the families. Thank you for us. Thank you for honoring, remembering, and never forgetting. Because at the end of the day, the thing people care about the most is that the life of their service member means something. And that people respect and appreciate it and are grateful for it. And this is, Steve, certainly something you know could speak to. In fact, I may make you do that today. Who can, I mean, families who've lost somebody, Gold Star families, the biggest thing they care about the most is that other people get and understand and appreciate what it meant and what it means and why they permitted their family member to go off and serve. And I think the brutality of the Vietnam War was really not in Vietnam. It was what happened when all these poor guys came home and were treated terribly. And I've always thought that the biggest lesson Vietnam taught this country was to separate the warrior from the war. Because it didn't happen this way in the War on Terror. It didn't happen with Kuwait. It didn't happen with all these other engagements. In fact, just the opposite. The outpouring was tremendous. Whatever people thought about the decisions that were being made in Washington. And I really do believe that you all tell me when I say thank you that it's your honor to be there, but you gotta understand what this means to all these families who will never get back the person that they've lost and what you mean to them. And that's why it was important to me to give you all an opportunity to come together and to just say thank you. So thank you, and God bless you for who you are, what you do, and the commitment you make to our military families. It's very, very important, and it's really special. So thank you. And Steve, you want to say a word? I think most of us need to post all that.
We can handle it. So for me to be standing here with the governor in the State House in Boston, where American freedom was born, in the People's House, as a Gold Star father, as a retired police officer, and now as a state representative, it's pretty special.
Hugely reelected.
Yes, got reelected as a Republican in Massachusetts, and I'm proud of that. Thank you, Governor Baker. But I believe, like Governor Baker, we serve with our hearts. You can tell Governor Baker serves with his heart. And that makes it easier. But my heart was broken on July 23rd, 2009. So all the events I would go to help fallen families happened to me. And that is what everybody's worst nightmare is. So when they called me to go to the Yarmouth police station, and they gave me that news, you know, I made this horrible noise that came out of my body, and I hit the floor, and my police officers picked me up. And then we had to get in the cars to go tell my wife and kids. So that happened on July 23rd, 2009. And we got to the house. We had police, firefighters, ambulance, chaplains, because we knew it was going to be bad. And when we walked up the steps, I told everybody with me to stop, because it was my job to tell my family. And I went up those steps and my feet felt like cement. They didn't want to go up the steps, but I made myself do it. And I looked in the front window of our home. There was my wife in the kitchen, my son Alex with his buddies, and my twin daughters. And I didn't want to go in because I knew I would break their hearts. But I opened the door, went in, and all I could say was, "It's Nick." So that's what happens to Gold Star families. And the next day, we're at Dover Air Force Base. And here comes my son in a flag-draped coffin. I've never seen his body. And, you know, it breaks a family. But at that funeral, now I'm a cop, and at the time, there were people that were going to funerals to cause trouble. And I said that better not happen. But I also knew that you were going to be there. So just know, like the governor said, the impact that you have. When I saw you there, the Patriot Guard Riders, I felt protected. And I felt not alone. And from that moment on, you've given me strength to survive for 13 years, to live without the son that never got married, that never had a chance to have a family, and run for office and serve. And we serve with our hearts. And one other thing about the power of the motorcycle. I had never ridden in my life. And when Nick was killed, during that funeral procession, my wife was in front of me in the car, my kids were like on either side, and we were just in a very bad way. And I really didn't know if I could get through it. I wanted to be with my son because I needed to protect him, and I didn't. And during the procession, I just remember bits and pieces looking out the window and seeing hundreds and hundreds of people, black and white, rich and poor, just lining the streets as we bring my son to his grave. But during that ride, there was a moment when we heard motorcycles. I don't remember seeing them, but I remember hearing like a motorcycle and another motorcycle. We were being escorted. And I remember that moment. I looked at my wife and I said, "Do you hear that?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "We're not alone." It was the sound of the motorcycle that helped heal us. And then they taught me how to ride, and we started Big Nick's Ride, and we've done that for 13 years. We've raised, you know, almost $1 million. We give every penny away. And we remember Nicholas as just a brave, handsome, young Marine with a big heart, just like you, Governor. So, from the bottom of my heart, not as an elected official, not as a cop, but as a dad, I thank you. What you do, what we do, matters. Thank you, Governor.
Steve, that was beautiful, and I honestly can't imagine anybody doing a better job of explaining why this is so important and why it matters and why we're so appreciative you get up and you play for real on behalf of these folks and their families. God bless you.
I would like to take this time to say that every time we've been at a wake for a fallen active duty veteran, it's always been my amazement how you could come to the flag line of 150 people, shake their hand, and thank them for being there and doing what we do. So at this time, I would like to present to you in thanks and gratitude from the Patriot Guard Riders so that you will remember you're part of our family. And I'd like to present it to you. This is presented to Governor Charlie Baker.
She comes from Boston, works at the jewelry store, down in the harbor where the ferries come to shore. She never really knew how good it would feel to finally find herself in a place so warm and real. She wears a Red Sox cap to hide her baby dress. The girl she was in New England is different now and then. In all the local bars, she flirts and tells the boys while they're talking. She's from Boston. She comes from Boston, talks to her family now and then. Through emails and postcards, she tries to explain to them that education and occupation will have to wait for now. She loves the Rasta reggae rhythms, her dreams have changed somehow. She wears a Red Sox cap to hide her baby dress. The girl she was in New England is different now and then. In all the local bars, she flirts and tells the boys while they're talking. She